But around 17 to 19, like I was saying, I started to question a lot of these things. I started to question a lot more things, and it started to be questioning everything. Like why are they building the bridge this way? Why is this fire hydrant thing located here? Why is the police located here? Why, when you move places, do you do this and that? And I started to ask a lot of questions. It could be to Google, or it could be to people like my father. I thought, wow, my dad is like this giant source of information. I can just ask him a lot of questions and he'll probably know the answer to them, or he'll probably give me a really good answer. And he's like this amazing source of information that I can use. And it's free, and it's like, it's from your father as well. So it's like, I started to think, wow, this is some really valuable things, really valuable information that can answer all my questions. So I just started questioning a lot of things around those ages, like 17 to 19. And I'm trying to think of some examples, but just about everything that you could think of, like why you do things, or why you do things in a certain order, or why when you do this one thing do you have to do the other, why restaurants do this and that, why movie theaters do this and that, why do they charge for this, why do you park here, why everything. I started to question everything. And this sort of built up until I was around 19, 20. Right now I'm 21, right? But around the time, up until I was around 19, 20 is when it started to build up. And then when I was 19, 20 is around the time I watched Death Note for the first time. And that sort of started to bring out my detective, deduction, reasoning, intuition, that sort of part. It started to like implement it into my questioning perspective, part of me, right? It started to make me even more observant like I already was during those last 2 years. But now I started to sort of implement the deduction, reasoning, observant, intuition side to it. It started to implement that into how I was thinking. And obviously, like around the ages of 17, 19, I started to drop all of that philosophy and the corrupted way of thinking, all of that, because of how I started to question things. So I kind of dropped all that, and I started being more questioning of the world, and questioning of like what I was trying to convince myself of how life was, and what was necessary and what wasn't. And then now that I had this nice baseline, you could add the whole detective part to it. And I know it's going to sound weird at the start when you think about it, like, oh, like from watching this one stupid anime, like that I changed like a decent amount or whatever. But it did start from Death Note, where I tried to like follow along with the story, and when they were trying to make cases for things or figure things out, their train of thought, how they were thinking. It wasn't like I was this genius that solved everything and knew what was going to happen before it happened. It wasn't like that at all, but it was just like I was trying to follow along and try and figure things out as they were happening, as they were trying to like explain things through, right? Because in the anime, Death Note, it's about sort of these two detectives that are going up against each other, and one is trying to outsmart the other, and each of them are trying to make a case for who the criminal is. And they always explain, they always give you these cases, and then they try and like walk you through the strategy that each of them came up with, and their reasoning for it, their intuition, what they pick up, what they end up deducing from the information and the clues. And so I kind of took that, and after following the series and following it like closely, trying to follow everything, I kind of took that and implemented it into my life, and it started to be this thing where it's no longer like, it wasn't like a switch that I turn on and off, but it's sort of just it's just on all the time. And I feel like there's different types of being observant, right? Like girls generally, they tend to pick out a lot of details and things that us guys may not like pick out on. Like a lot of details, and like, yeah, they just pay attention to detail and they notice things that we normally wouldn't even notice. And I'm not that kind of observant. It's a different kind of observant. Like I still miss things, and I still like don't notice things or don't pay attention to some details. But it's a different type of observant. It's kind of like I look at something and I try and reason like why that thing is there or why that thing is happening. If it's something like slightly out of place or something that I ask like what's that thing doing there? Like for example, in like a restaurant, like I might look around and think like why did they put this thing here? Why is this thing, that sort of thing. And I try and sort of, from my intuition, I try and get an idea of why something might be. It's that sort of observant. I look at something and it grabs my attention and I'm like, why is this here? And I try and reason it. And one recent example that I can think of, because this sort of happens all the time, so it's kind of difficult to think of an example, but a couple of months ago, it was my mother's birthday, and we went out to a restaurant with the whole family, right? Me, my brother, and my father and my mother. And there wasn't a whole lot of build up to the event happening. And I'm going to explain this one situation, but I just want you to keep in mind that after you hear like a situation and what the deduction was or whatever, like it's easy to say like, oh, that's what I would have thought, or like, oh, it's easy to say like, oh, that makes sense, like, yeah, that's totally, like, I totally would have picked that out. But in the moment, when you're in the moment, like living those moments, you don't really pay attention to these things unless you have that sort of like observant side to you turned on. And so what happened was, we were just talking like normal at the table. The waitress had already taken our order, and my dad suddenly got up to talk to the waitress, and no one really paid attention to it. Like my brother and my mom, they didn't really pay attention to it. They probably thought he just went to the bathroom or whatever. And I don't remember exactly what he went up there to ask for, but I think what it was actually, I thought initially it might be like a napkin thing, like the napkins were missing or something. I don't remember, or yeah, I didn't remember that well, but now that I think about it, I think it was the straws. I think this restaurant has switched from like plastic straws to paper made straws, but they didn't have any on the table. And obviously, like, this is one sort of thing, for example, is like when you get the paper made straws, like no one would ask like, why do they have paper straws instead of the plastic ones? And I'm like the first person that the first time, like a year ago, when I was given a paper straw, I was like, why? Or like, yeah, a year ago, I was like, why are they making paper straws? And then you find out like it's because they're trying to not waste plastic. They're trying to not, like, because people are saying there's too much plastic being wasted on straws and we could just make them paper. Why not make them paper and not have all this garbage that's building up for years? It's hard to like decompose, right? But like I would, like, that's another example actually inside the story. This is an example within an example. Like that's the thing I would look at and I would ask why and be observant of, like as soon as I get the straw, I'd be like, wait, this is paper, why is it paper? That sort of thing, right? But okay, so to continue the story, my father got up, he went to the waitress who had already taken our order, and I looked at him for a while, and I always sort of look at things for a while, like even if it's another example within an example would be if I'm in a restaurant and like there's a light above my head and all of a sudden I like look down at the table and it's like, why is there this light on the table? And then I look up and I'm like, wait, there's this lamp or thing, and I'm like, I might not point out immediately, but eventually I'll be like, hey, did any of you guys notice like there's this giant ass lamp like on top, like literally like a couple centimeters above our head. Like, did anyone else notice that? And everyone would be like, wait, what? Like, wait, oh shit, oh yeah, I guess they have this decoration. And it's like, wait, hello, like no one noticed that they had this like it's literally right on top of us. So I guess that's another example within an example. But okay, so my dad got up to the waitress and asked for something, and my mother was just like, oh, he's probably just asking like for the straws or the napkins or whatever the thing was. And it wasn't that important, it was like a side thing. I think it might have been something with the straws or something, or I don't remember what exactly it was. And so my mom was just like, oh yeah, he probably just like, she eventually noticed that I was looking too much in that direction, and she was like, he's probably just doing this and that. And it wasn't like I was sitting almost in front of where the waitress was and where my dad were talking. It wasn't like I turned my head. It was literally like they were kind of in front of me. So it wasn't like I turned my head that much, but I was still like looking into it. And my mother noticed, and she was like, oh, he's probably just asking for this and that. And I thought, okay, it takes like 5 seconds to ask for that. Why is he sitting there for like 40 seconds, 30 seconds asking for it? And I thought, well, it's my mother's birthday. What could he be asking? And then I'm like, bam, got it. And there wasn't any sort of build up to it before this. I don't think like we didn't, it's not like I talked about it before or anything, but it's just from past years. I remember, wait a second, like my father always does this thing with me and my mom where he tries to like do the whole thing where he tells like the waitress of the restaurant like, oh, it's someone's birthday, and they come there with like a cake and they start singing and all these things, and they bring you dessert and it has your name on it and all these things. And it's just like, I'm like, damn, that's what he's doing, isn't it? And so then I wait for my father to get over to the table, and then I'm like, did you go ask them to like, you know, make arrangements for like the cake or whatever because it's my mom's birthday? And he looks at me and like this smile comes up, and I'm like, I got it. Like it's that sort of thing. And then he says, I wanted it to be a surprise. And then obviously it's kind of bad because it was no longer a surprise, but my mom didn't want that thing in the first place. And everyone knew, my dad knew, my father knows, my mom didn't want the cake and the singing and all this and that in the first place. So I asked her, I was like, did you go do that? And then he's like, yeah. And then like it's that sort of thing that's like my observant deduction reasoning type thing that's like always sort of turned on. Yeah. And see, here's another thing that shows like I don't know if this is deduction reasoning or smarts or whatever it shows, but this is another example of things. As soon as my dad said, oh, like I want it to be a surprise, he kind of like ruined the surprise. Even though he was smiling, he was like, oh, I want it to be a surprise. Like, damn. I was like, well, you could have just pretended I was wrong, right? Like, like that. You could have just, what do you mean? Like, it wasn't up to me to ruin the surprise. It was up to you. Because even though I said, like, hey, did you go do this? You could have easily said, no, that's not what I want to do. And then you would have maintained the surprise. So, like, it's this, like, see, this is another thing that shows, like, my, like, who I am. I don't know. It makes me happy to like show it, but like this is another thing. Like my dad was like, "Oh, this is like you ruined the surprise," but I was like, "Hey, it was up to you because you could have just kept it a secret, pretended I was wrong." So, from my perspective, the surprise was up to him to ruin, not to me. So it's this sort of thing. But yeah, this sort of made me happy at the end. But yeah, I just wanted to explain what my whole this whole thing about how I think nowadays. And I'm sure I'll come up with more videos and more things to make it more clear, but this is just like the first sort of idea of how, firstly, like the first parts of this video, like the whole background to it, and then the second part to it has been like what I think like right now and what it's like. And or another thing here, okay, maybe I'm getting too carried away, but like another thing to show like the sort of way I think, you know, making these videos, I thought this is going to be like a long ass talk, right? It's really hard to follow, and especially if I'm trying to watch something, it's really hard to follow in a talk show and to just sit there the whole time through, right? Why not make like a table of contents up on the screen, which I haven't edited the video, but my plan is to put a table of contents on the top right on these two separate videos. It might end up just being one video, but hopefully it's two separate videos one for the background, one for this part of it, where you have a table of contents on the right or on the left, wherever the table of contents is, and it's up during the whole video. And with this table of contents, you can it'll tell you the timestamp, and you can go to that timestamp to see like the topic that you want to hear specifically. You know, if you get bored of a topic, if you're like, I'm not feeling it, this is going for too long, I don't want to really like spend my time hearing about this, you could just skip to the next part, right? Or you can just switch between parts. And so I thought like that was a good idea, right? Like it's these sort of things that I come up with that show who I am. Okay, but yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. I'm still trying to come up with a name for it and with background gameplay to it. There's this whole thing I can explain about why I don't make League videos, because it's kind of like, it's not really the easiest thing. I mean, it's easy to just like hit record and upload a whole gameplay to it, but no one's really interested in like watching me play. I guess people are, but just give me ideas if you have any of like what you want to see in the background. If you just want to see Minecraft gameplay, if you'd rather see League of Legends gameplay, if you'd rather see like a full gameplay or like cutout versions, because like cutout versions are difficult to make. But I can just make like a cutout version of gameplay and try and like have it focused on my own character the whole time. But yeah, just let me know what you'd like to see. And also, if you have any ideas for the name of the series, give me an idea. It'll always be up to me to decide, and I'll probably end up coming up with something like Omero's Journey Talks or Journal, or Omero's Thoughts, something like that. But if you have any sort of ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments. Any question, comments, quotes, feel free to leave them down in the comment section, and I'll probably answer them. Engagement is always nice, even though sometimes, I mean, I always like when everyone says that. Like, honestly, thank you for the support. Anyone who supports me, thank you a lot. It means a lot, means the world. Sometimes I just don't get around to some of the comments, but if you have anything, just leave it down and I'll try to reply it and everything. And thank you for the support. Also, streaming on Twitch. I might just have something on the screen so you can see it the whole time, but I don't know if I'm streaming now. But I used to stream a couple of days ago. Now my schedule's getting a lot more busier, but I might still stream every now and then it'll probably just be League. And it'll be like probably mostly focused on the gameplay until we're in queue or champ select or something. Then it's probably easier to talk, right? But like talking and playing at the same time is kind of difficult. So the gameplay, it will mostly be around the gameplay and my thought process during the game. But I might not talk that much. We'll see. It's around, the rank is around D1 probably, unless I go into Smurf. It'll be around D4. But the games will probably be around D1 and Masters if I play on my main or on my second account. But yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Please rate, comment, subscribe. Support is always appreciated. I hope you're watching it. Wink, wink. Rena. I'm just kidding. I'm not. But like, yeah. Thank you everyone for watching. It means a lot to me.